tonight. We are going to be looking at retirement planning from a woman's perspective tonight. I don't think you're going to be hearing anything thunderbolt out of the blue new, but what you are going to be hearing are typical retirement planning issues addressed from a woman's perspective. Now, I know that for many of us, we are generally caregivers, and we take care of people. We take care of our spouses and our, come on in. We got some tables over here. We take care of our spouses and significant others. Some of us are still taking care of kids or even grandkids. Some of us are taking care of elderly parents. But who do we look after last after that whole big laundry list? Ourselves, right? So we're going to give ourselves permission for the next hour to be selfish and think about ourselves and our retirement. Click, I say. There it goes. All right. We are Wealth Preservation Group. We are a local financial services firm. We have offices in Enfield and Agawam, Massachusetts. John D. is the founder and president of our company. He's been making rock-solid retirement plans for the last 30 years. Mary D., who is right over here, wave to the crowd, Mary. Mary is our investment guru, and she helps on the security side. My name is Cyndi Stewart. I'm a financial advisor. I can create all-encompassing retirement plans. Mary Beth Chimalecki is right over here. She is our crackerjack client relations coordinator. We'd be lost without her. She provides amazing customer service to our clients. Abby McLean is also with us. Abby is an elder law attorney. Wayne Schmidt is the financial wizard behind a lot of our grading investments tools and what am I trying to play? Portfolios, thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Nick Stovall, there's a saying, know what you don't know, and we are not CPAs, but we have Stovall Tax on retainer, so that if any of our clients have tax questions or tax issues, and those do come up in retirement, we have someone that we can call and get answers for you from CPAs. Oops, yay, we're almost done. Yeah, that's right. This is not right. Abby McLean. Abby McLean is our elder law attorney. She does elder law, real estate, estate planning, probate, and general practice. I have to walk over here to touch a button every time, all right. All right, specifically for us as women, what are the challenges that we are facing? Well, typically we will outlive our spouses by approximately 6 years statistically. Accelerating demise of pensions. If you are lucky enough to have a pension in this day and age, understand though that there are complexities that come with pensions, and you really should seek guidance before you just check off a box for an election. Estate and legacy planning issues for us. It's critically important as we move towards retirement that we make arrangements to ensure that all of our assets transfer to who we want the way we want. Longer than expected lifetimes, and we're going to look at that in detail in just a moment. And finally, filling the retirement income gap. Now, when we talk about the retirement income gap, we generally think of that in terms of you're going to get Social Security, and that's going to bring you up to here. Maybe you got a pension that brings you up to here. But for you to live the standard of living that you've become accustomed to really requires an amount that's up here. So the gap that's in between what you know you're going to get from pension and Social Security versus what you really need to be comfortable and maintain your standard of living is addressing an income gap. All right. We have a chart here that projects out average life expectancy based upon looking out for ages here. And the first thing that should be jumping out at you on this chart is that in every single category, more women than men will live to that milestone age. For the women in this room here, 70% of us, 7 out of 10 of us in here, will see age 80 or older. More than half, 52%, will see 85 or older. And almost 1 in 3, I mean, look to your left, look to your right. One of the 3 of you is going to be blowing out the candles on your 90th birthday cake or older. This right here is why it's so critically important that we make the right decisions now in our 50s and our 60s when we're doing our retirement planning, Because if we mess it up at this point, those are mistakes we're going to be living with for the next 20, 25, 30 years or more. And that's way too long to be saying I woulda, coulda, shoulda. Don't you agree? Right. Back to the button. All right. We're going to cover 6 major topics tonight. We're going to talk about understanding the source of the professional advice that you do receive for your retirement planning. We're going to talk about failing to allocate your assets based upon what should be a proper level of risk tolerance for you as you're transitioning out of the accumulation phase of your life and into the distribution phase of your life. We're going to touch on Social Security, and we are going to talk about the big changes that happened about 6 months ago. We're going to talk about long-term care planning, talk about that income gap, and finally the importance of getting a second opinion. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Mary Dee up here, and she's going to start out. Oh, I'm sorry, let me, one more thing. Come on up. This is Mary's husband, John, and yes, he really is riding that 5-foot unicycle. It's become a trademark of his of sorts. And, no, come on, Mary, you're up. You're up. I did. Come on. I was just pointing out that he was your husband. So here's Mary Dee.
Ladies, thank you for coming out tonight, and congratulations on walking up all those stairs. I apologize for the elevator being out. I wanted to first of all share you my story of how I came to be standing here in front of you today. 7 years ago, my husband and founder of the company, John D., was diagnosed with stage 7 head and neck cancer, and the prognosis was grim. The doctors told us right from the start, if he survived the very brutal treatment and actually beat the cancer, there's a very strong probability that he'd come out of it totally disabled. Boy, was that a wake-up call. I had a lot of planning to do. I had to step up to the plate, and I had to take over the business. I had to take control of the financial well-being of my family, and I had to take control of our legacy plan and figure out what was going to happen next. Well, his story has a happy ending. He came back to work about a year later, and life went on. We were rocking and rolling along. The business was good, the kids were good, we were good. And then 2 years ago, lightning struck twice. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was deja vu. Now, it wasn't deja vu because John had been diagnosed a few years earlier. It was deja vu because when I was a junior in high school, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. I buried her my junior year in college. I remember thinking, history cannot repeat itself. This can't be happening. We already knew what would happen if John was no longer in the picture, but now we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what happens if we were both gone. Having 2 children, young adults, we all know that children are not launching the way they used to. How would our kids handle inheriting our estate? Who would be there to guide them into adulthood? We still had lots of planning to do. Well, my story, like John, has a happy ending, and I'm happy to say that I made sure history did not repeat itself. A mastectomy, some chemo, some salt, some pepper. I'm here to tell you my story. I came out of the whole thing battered and bruised, but stronger and more confident. Most importantly, I came out with a strong financial plan and a strong legacy plan. And with that, let's get on to our first pitfall. Not understanding the source of financial advice. It's imperative to know where you're getting your financial advice from, who is giving it to you, and the motives behind the person giving it to you. Because of the amount of confusion, the SEC conducted a study to better regulate the industry, because nobody knows what a financial planner is. Nobody knows these days what they're selling and what they're trying to get out of you. So the SEC conducted a study. My point in telling you this is that you understand who it is giving you advice and what their motives are behind the advice they're giving you. Typical ways of obtaining financial advice. Your first, insurance-only agents. They can be individual agents, or they can represent many different companies. Registered representatives, otherwise known as brokers, or registered investment advisors. We're going to go through these on the next slide a little bit in more detail. Insurance-only agents. They represent their appointed insurance carrier. They are compensated through commissions paid to them by the insurance carrier. They are held to suitability standards. Registered representatives, also known as brokers. professionals who sell you the mutual funds, the stocks, the bonds. They, like insurance agents, are compensated through commissions paid to them by their brokerage firm. And they are also held to suitability standards. What does suitability mean? It means whatever they're providing you must be suitable for you. Maybe not the best fit, but suitable. Last group, the registered investment advisor. They work for you. Why? Because you pay them directly. They are paid through a fee based on the amount of assets under management. And they are fiduciaries. They are legally responsible to put your interests first. And why is this? Because you are paying them directly. You gotta watch the money flow. Advice from Warren Buffett. The broker is not your friend. He's more like a doctor who charges patients on how often they change medications. And he gets paid far more for the stuff the house is promoting than the stuff that will make you better. The next pitfall facing women today, failing to allocate your assets properly. Strategic allocation means diversification based on your unique risk tolerance. Diversification means allocating your assets appropriately. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. What is the first color that comes to mind when I say money?
Green.
Green, ding, ding, ding. You bet. Now, when I say red, what color comes to mind?
Red.
Red. I'm sorry, I was not frozen. I do that every time. When I say red, what does that mean to you?
Danger.
Okay. When I say green, what does that mean to you? Go. We, Wealth Preservation Group, like to think of your money in terms of red and green. Green money is your I know so money. It's your principal protected, you know it's going to be their money. It is your Social Security, your pensions, your fixed annuities, your CDs, the money that no ifs, ands, or buts is going to be there. Your red money is your I hope so money. It's your Alaskan cruise money. It is your mutual funds, your bonds, your stocks, the things that you hope are going to be there. And green. Okay, we have a way of determining the difference between red money and green money is the amount of risk, right? Green money has no risk. Red money has different types of risk. As you start at the very bottom, the very point at the very left-hand side, that's going to be your green money, your principal protected money. We have a way of defining risk. It's called standard deviation. As you work your way up the little arrow into the different classification of investments, your risk increases. T-bills, bonds, stocks, commodities, and REITs, what I call the Wild West of the investing world. When determining how much risk that you need in your portfolio, we have a simple way of kind of figuring that out. Well, every case is different because every situation is different. Basically what we do is we take the number 100 and we subtract your age. If you're 55 years old, 100 minus 55 is 45. 55% of your money should be green money, safe, principal protected. 45 should be at risk. The older you get, the more safe money you should have. Because the first part of your life was your accumulation phase. You worked and worked and worked and worked, and you saved and saved until someday for retirement. Well, if you're in this room, you're either at retirement, after retirement, but you're stepping over an important threshold into the distribution phase of your life. It's time to look at that basket you accumulated. You're not putting any more into that basket, you're done. And you have to make sure that basket is going to last through your lifetime. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Abby, but I've got a couple questions for you before I do. To quickly recap the things I've talked about. One, your financial advisor, who you turn to advice right now, and how are they being compensated. Oh, and by the way, when we were on that slide, I did not tell you who we are. Both Cyndi and myself are insurance agents, and we are also fiduciaries. We are also individual advisor representatives. But our fiduciary responsibilities by law always come first. So my first question for you is, what type of advisor are you working with, and how are they being compensated? Two, how much red money do you have and how much green money do you have? 3, is your risk tolerance appropriate for this part of your life? And that leads us right into the 4th and most critical. Is the money you have in that basket that you spent your accumulation phase gathering, is that going to last you through your life? Okay? Abby, come on up. Thank you, ladies.
Hello. We're talking all these pitfalls and negative, dangerous things, but the good thing is that there are answers. So whenever we have this negative thing to think about, it's something to address and turn it into a positive for yourselves. So we've mentioned about leaving a legacy. We all are going to have a legacy of some kind. We want ours to be a good one. Do you have a will? Do you have a healthcare proxy, power of attorney? Perhaps a trust or guardianship is something that you might need to set up. You want to pick an estate administrator. You maybe want to think about long-term care insurance, or at least preparing or protecting if you have to go into a nursing home. Lots of things to think about for when you're at a point that all this really needs to be in place, and then you can enjoy life and not worry about it. A will. Most of us know what a will is. And in fact, I was just discussing yesterday, had clients in, and they said, I can't believe Prince died without a will. How many, there's a whole website of celebrities who died without a will. I mean, come on, it's not like they couldn't afford a will. They just neglected it. It's a smart thing to put in place. It's going to control the disposition of your estate. Otherwise, you're letting the state tell your family what they get, not you. And of course, the state laws are going to vary. Massachusetts, Connecticut, I'm licensed in both, and they do differ. But you have to be at least 18. You have to be of sound mind, and it's a very low threshold. You just have to know your family and your assets. You don't have to, know calculations and all that type of thing. You don't have to be like these ladies with all the numbers down. Of course, the will has to be written and witnessed, and there are certain formalities that are followed when you sign. And of course, it becomes effective once you pass away. Certain property is excluded, and basically that's going to be property that's jointly held or that has a named beneficiary on it. Now, a lifetime document that's very important is having a power of attorney in place. That gives someone the ability to act on your behalf to help you manage your affairs if you're unable to do it yourself. This person's label is called attorney-in-fact, and you can be as broad or as narrow as you want in that document. You can allow them only to do certain things, or you allow them to do everything. That's entirely up to you. Now, a healthcare proxy is something that is another lifetime document. These two documents are void when you pass away, but having them in place during your lifetime is going to save your family expense and time and headache, because then they don't have to go to court to be petitioned to be a guardian or conservator for you. The healthcare proxy is where you're naming someone to make medical choices for you if you're unable to do it yourself. You can communicate to them what your wishes are. You can put those in writing in great detail. But if your doctor documents, they're unconscious, they can't make a choice, this person is going to step in and make the choice that you would make on your behalf. Obviously, as I said, the doctor determines that. If you're unconscious or under anesthesia and then you come out of that, you're the boss. Your word is what is followed, but if you're unable to do it, you've named someone. And a little note here at the bottom, holographic will, that's one that you do on your own. They're not binding in Massachusetts, and they're not advisable anywhere, really. You want to have them done properly because you're not here to make corrections at that point, and you want everything to go as smoothly and without interruption as possible. Now, a trust is another thing to think about. It might fit something that you need. It's a written document, and it can also be paired with financial side of things. It's a lot of people now are setting up trusts to protect things from if they have to go into a nursing home. They don't want the state to get everything. They want to have at least some of their stuff have a chance to be protected from attachment. It avoids probate entirely, takes care of distribution after you've passed away. It avoids probate costs because it doesn't go to probate. It can reduce taxes. There are lots of purposes for trusts. As I said, the Medicaid protection is a big one. Some people have special needs family that they want to provide for when they're gone. It makes your estate plan a lot more flexible. You can finance education for grandkids. You can support your elderly parents and make charitable gifts as well. Now we have another pitfall to discuss, and we're going to turn it over to Cyndi.
Thank you, Abby. Okay, so Abby touched on trusts and different ways that you can use them. We're going to talk about one type of trust specifically that comes into play when dealing with long-term care costs. So, quick show of hands here. You have about a 1 in 1,200 chance of losing everything you own in a house fire at some point in your life. Raise your hand for me if you have homeowners insurance or a renter's policy to protect you from this risk. Of course, we all do. You have about a 1 in 240 chance of being involved in a major car accident. Raise your hand if you have car insurance to cover you for that risk. Of course you do.
Thank you.
You have a 1 in 2 chance, a 50-50 shot, of needing some form of long-term care services, be it home health aid, or assisted living, or full-on nursing home care at some point in your lifetime. Now, raise your hand if you have a dedicated long-term care policy to cover you for this risk. 2 hands, okay. And that is exactly what I expected to see, frankly. I don't have a long-term care policy, and I'm not surprised that so many of you don't either. Now, raise your hand if at some point in the past you priced out a long-term care policy and said, oh my goodness, that's expensive. Yeah, that's the rub. Basically, insurance that you have a 50% chance of using is going to be expensive, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to touch on a way that you can shelter some of your assets from this type of an expense by utilizing a trust instead of long-term care insurance. So what are we talking about with costs here? These are average costs for nursing home care in various metros around our area. I want you to think of a number in your head. I want you to think of your total net worth. Lump the house in, lump everything in. And I want you to think for a minute, if it was getting spent down at $146,000 a year, how long would it last? Yeah. So that is the nature of the problem that we are dealing with. Now there's only 4 ways that this type of cost gets paid. The gold standard is to have long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance in Connecticut, are there any Connecticut residents here? No, I thought I saw one signed up, but that's okay. Connecticut has what's called a partnership plan. 16 other states have it as well. It's a plan whereby if you buy a certain type of long-term care insurance, the state will match you dollar for dollar and protect the amount of coverage that you took on from a Medicaid spend down if you find yourself at the point where you've exhausted your long-term care insurance. In Massachusetts, we do not have a partnership plan. When your insurance is exhausted, that's when the spend down begins. So the next way that it would get taken care of would be self-pay. That's also known as the crossed fingers plan. It's where you are crossing your fingers and hoping that you will not be in the 50% that winds up needing this care. However, if you lose that coin toss and you do need this coverage, you will bear the full brunt of the expense of it. We're going to talk about an asset protection plan utilizing irrevocable trust. It's not for everyone, but it can help in certain situations. And finally, if you or your spouse is a veteran and served during a period of active war, there is a program out there for you, separate from regular VA medical benefits, called Aid in Attendance. That could be a big help for you for covering these kind of costs. And you could cobble these together as well. Now, let's think about an example. I'm going to step us through a couple of examples here. All right, we're going to start with you have no long-term care insurance, And because the fellas aren't here, we're going to pick on them. And let's say you're married and your husband goes into a nursing home. So you are the spouse still in the community, husband is in nursing home, and you're being handed a bill for $146,000 for his care. In the state of Massachusetts, you as the community spouse will be allowed to keep one house, one car, and approximately $119,000. Everything else gets liquidated down to pay for your spouse's care. Now, if you're single, if you're divorced, or if your husband has predeceased you and you're widowed, then all bets are off. In Massachusetts, everything gets liquidated, you get to keep $2,000. Okay, I know I hear the gasps and everything. I know. No, you know what? I agree with you. I agree with you. And if you have a relative or a neighbor or a coworker or you know anybody who has been through the Medicaid spend down process, you know it is heartbreaking. You have spent decades accumulating these assets, and then to watch them just getting spent down like that, it's painful. It is, it's painful. Now, what we are suggesting is if you have appropriate assets, you can create an irrevocable grantor's trust, okay? An obvious asset to put into a trust is a house. You can also put cash value life insurance. You can also put fixed or fixed indexed annuities in there. You want to stay away from putting anything variable in there. You don't want to put stocks and bonds because they swing around in value, and that can be difficult if you don't make it through the look-back period, all right? So you create the trust. You're basically taking assets from one pocket, you're putting them into another. Now they're going to be in the name of the irrevocable trust of Jane Doe, okay? After 5 years, the assets in the trust become invisible to Medicaid. So those will continue to go down to kids and grandkids, and more importantly, since we are women and we live longer and are likely to be the one down here dealing with this major spend down, a trust can also provide a source of funds to help you buy the niceties that you might want while you are in nursing home care. Maybe you want a bigger TV. Maybe you chipped your tooth on a cracker in the day room and you want to have a nice crown put on instead of having the tooth pulled. You can use your trust funds to pay for those things that Medicaid won't cover. Now, this is a very complex topic. We do a whole 1-hour seminar just on this. But if anything I've said has resonated with you and you want to learn more about it, you want to see if it's appropriate for you, if you want to have a discussion about it and learn more, by all means, we are all giving free consultations. Book an appointment with us to come in and talk to us, and we'll be happy to go over this with you in more detail. All right, next pitfall is failing to fill the income gap. And remember what I said when we talked about the income gap, we were talking about the difference in the amount between what Social Security and maybe a pension will cover versus what you really need. Now, when you're trying to determine your income gap, the first thing you need to do is start looking at what the foundation is for your retirement planning and your retirement income stream. And the cornerstone of that foundation for all of us, Social Security. So we're going to spend a few minutes here talking about the details of Social Security and how it pertains to us. Unmarried women, including widows age 65 and older, Social Security represented almost 50% of their total income. And for unmarried women, 45% of those had Social Security as 90% of their retirement income. This is why it's critically important that we understand how the Social Security system works so that we can maximize the amount we are taking out of that system. Knowing how to play the game and how to file properly is half the battle. We're going to cover 4 components today. We're going to talk about how old you are affects the amount that you'll receive. We're going to talk about coordinating spousal and ex-spousal benefits if you're divorced. If you're married, the importance of the survivor benefit within Social Security. And finally, keeping an eye on the amount of tax you pay on the Social Security benefits you receive. The first thing to understand about Social Security is that for almost a 20-year stretch here, they have been very gradually raising the age at which you are entitled to 100% of your allotted benefits. Now, for most of us in this room, we're going to fall in that 1953 to 1954 zone. Full retirement age is 66 for people born in that year. If you're born a little later, it starts to inch up. Me, I'm born in the mid-60s, so 67 is my full retirement age. Now, I have a special speedometer here. Instead of measuring miles per hour, it's going to measure age. And instead of the odometer measuring how many miles you're driving, it's going to measure what percent of your Social Security benefit you're entitled to at each age that we talk about here. We're going to start it out at 62. If you run into Social Security the minute you turn 62 and sign up for your benefits, understand that you are taking a 25% pay cut, and it's permanent, okay? Your full retirement age is when you get 100% of the benefits you're entitled to. If you take it earlier, they apply a reducer factor. Now, every year that you wait past the age of 62, your benefit will start to increase by 6.25% until it reaches your full retirement age. At that point, you're getting 100% of the benefit that you're entitled to from Social Security. Even better, if you were to wait until age 70, you would max out at 132% of what you were allotted for. Now, I'm not saying that there's never any reason to file early for Social Security. Some of us do physically demanding jobs, and we're just not going to make it to 66 or 70. If that is your situation and you have assets elsewhere that you can use to fill in the gap, absolutely, it makes sense for you. My message to you right now is understand the math of the decision that you're making. Let's take a look at this in real dollars. Hypothetically, if at age 66 you were entitled to $1,000 a month in Social Security, if you took your benefit at age 62, you would be locking yourself in at $750 a month. If you waited to age 70, $1,320. That's quite a range. It almost doubles. And there's nothing magic about your birthday month. You don't earn that roll-up in your birthday month. You actually get 1/12 of that roll-up for every month you wait to collect. There are 96 different months between age 62 and 70, and every one of them will generate a slightly different amount for you for Social Security. I keep wandering too far from my topic. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the different types of benefits that come under the Social Security umbrella. We're just going to kind of layer them up here, all right? When you're talking about Social Security and you're talking about a retired worker benefit, that means the benefit that you earned under your Social Security number, paying your FICA taxes out of every paycheck, okay? Now, up at the top here, we have a couple of examples, George and Jane. George, at his full retirement age, gets $2,000, and Jane gets $800. Now, if they both went into Social Security when they turned 66 and said, I want to start my benefits, they would be bringing in, together as a household, $2,800 a month. We see where that's coming from, right? Okay. Now, show of hands. How many people know what spousal benefit is, or if you read AARP, you might have heard it called free spousal? Okay, 2 hands, 3 hands. Okay. Let's do a quick 30-second history lesson here. Spousal benefit has actually been around since the beginning of the Social Security program back in the 1930s. And let's think for a minute about what the average household looked like in the 1930s when this program was created. Generally, there was the breadwinner who went out and earned the paycheck, paid the FICA taxes, and earned the Social Security benefit. And then there was the stay-at-home spouse who managed the household, raised the kids, but didn't contribute to Social Security under what was most likely her name, okay? Fast forward to today, and you've got 2 working spouses, generally, right? 2 people contributing to Social Security. When spousal benefit was originally conceived, it was created to be compensation for the non-working spouse. And at full retirement age, spousal benefit is worth 50% of the working spouse's full retirement age amount. So, come back to today, you've got two spouses working and two potential claims of spousal benefit that could be used to try to raise the amount that you're getting from Social Security. Let's make one change to George and Jane's application here. If at age 66, when they went in to apply for their benefits, instead of asking for her retired worker benefit under her own record, what if Jane said, I want to take my spousal benefit under my husband's record? What's half of 2,000? 1,000. So together, just by making that one little change on the application, they would be bringing in $3,000 a month instead of $2,800. We just gave them a $200 a month raise. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that because they are age 66. And I'm making a great big mental asterisk right here because this is one of the things that changed, and I'm going to cover it in detail in a second. But because in this example they are age 66, Jane can collect that $1,000 of spousal benefit for 4 years between the ages of 66 and 70. Remember my speedometer rolling up by 8% per year? She's still getting that because she hasn't activated her benefit. So at age 70, 4 years later, she can go back into Social Security. She can say, I want to let go of my spousal benefit. I want to start collecting my own benefit under my own record and give herself another $56 raise. Now, before I get into the changes, I want to touch on survivor benefit. When you're, well, if you're single, I'm sure we all understand, Social Security is a dies with you program. If you activate your Social Security benefit and 6 months later you get hit by the number 9 bus while you're crossing the street, you got 6 checks. Thank you. And that's it. Nobody inherits anything, nothing else. If you're married, it works a little differently. If you're married, when the first spouse dies, the smaller check goes away, regardless of who predeceases whom. So in our scenario up here, even if George died first, which statistically we know he probably will, even if George dies first, Jane would let go of her own benefit and go forward with $2,000 a month. Okay? So stick a pin in that because I'm going to talk about that more in just a minute. All right. Let's talk about the changes that were made by the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015. Bipartisan meaning they both have dirty hands on this one, left and right. They took away a sophisticated filing strategy that was called file and suspend. You may have heard a neighbor or a coworker or a relative talking about, oh, file and suspend. It was a way for one spouse to activate their record but not receive checks so that both spouses could continue to earn roll-up while collecting the spousal benefit. As of April 30th, that is gone forever. Nobody can use it. It's gone. The other change, and this is of particular interest for particularly widows and divorcees, restricted application is being phased out. The example I gave you earlier where Jane collects her spousal benefit and continues to earn the roll-up, that's restricted application. That has been phased out unless you were age 62 as of the end of last year, as of December 31st, 2015, restricted application is now gone for you as well. What that means for you is they've created a new term for what you're now covered by. You're called a deemed filer. If you file for any benefit, a spousal benefit or an ex-spousal benefit, you are deemed to have filed for all of them. They freeze you across the board for roll-up. So, if you are 62 or older as of last year, definitely come talk to us or talk to your financial advisors. You need to know how to take advantage of the benefit that you have. If you are younger than 62, definitely come in and talk to us. You do still have spousal benefit available to you, and there are ways that you can utilize it if the numbers work out properly for you. Social Security will not do your math homework on this for you. We will. We'll help you with it. In your packet, there is a page that says directions in bright red. It's got directions on the front side for just how to get your primary insurance amount. It's the amount that you get when you reach full retirement age. On the back, it has instructions for how to get your whole Social Security statement. Remember those little green and white statements they opened up? Yeah, they don't mail them with any regularity anymore. So if you can get us your primary insurance amount, we can calculate your best filing strategy for you. And we are offering that to everyone who came out here tonight. No charge, and it'll give you an opportunity to at least make sure you know what you're doing with Social Security. All right, let's talk about divorced spouse benefit for a second with Social Security. If you tolerated your ex-spouse for at least 10 years, you are entitled to an ex-spousal benefit through Social Security. To be entitled to collect that, have to be married to them for 10 years, have to have a copy of your marriage certificate and your divorce decree to prove it. You have to be at least 62 years old. It does not matter if your ex-spouse has filed for their benefit or not. You must still be unmarried. If you have remarried, you have now tied yourself to your new spouse's Social Security record. If you have divorced and married multiple times, and each one was for at least 10 years, you get to pick and choose which one you want, but you only get one. Take the one that's the highest. That's my professional advice. Finally, you must not be entitled to a higher benefit under your own record. These are the big four that will get you an appointment with Social Security to find out what you're entitled to under an ex-spouse's record. There are other smaller items that may come into play, but those will get you the appointment to find out what you can have.
What if he died?
That would be survivor benefit, and I will talk about that in a minute. One more thing I want to point out here is that for ex-spousal benefits, it will not negatively impact your alimony or if you had a quadro arrangement. In fact, the only way your ex-spouse will know that you are filing for benefits against his record is if you tell him. So don't shy away from a benefit that you are entitled to out of concerns over these items. You've earned it, collect it. Now I want to talk a little bit about survivor benefits under Social Security in a little bit more detail. Now, there's two statistics on this slide, one of which I find particularly shocking. The not shocking one is that 70% of all elderly persons with incomes below the poverty level are women. We saw that stat slide earlier on. We know we're going to be the lion's share of just about any statistic when you're looking at people of retirement age. Now, the shocking stat is that more than half of the elderly widows now living in poverty were not poor before the death of their husbands. So, how can this be happening? And more importantly, how can it be happening with such, frankly, alarming regularity? Let's go back to our George and Jane example and take a look at their retirement scenario. They're getting ready to retire. They each have a pension, lucky ducks, okay? They each have a Social Security check, and together they're bringing in a moderate income in retirement of about $60,000. They have savings, they have investments, there's even a little bit of life insurance there. If you were looking at George and Jane on a piece of paper, you might say, yeah, they're ready for a comfortable retirement. They're going to be fine. Well, let's take George out of the picture and see what happens. Now, depending on the company, some pensions don't offer the option of a survivor benefit. Some only offer a 50% survivor benefit. And sometimes, people look at the two amounts, single payout, joint payout, and they make a conscious choice to go with the higher one and just roll the dice. We already talked about what happens to Social Security when the first spouse dies. The smaller check goes away. So now, in one fell swoop, Jane has taken a 38% pay cut. Now, let me ask you a question. If you have a retirement spending budget that is geared towards receiving $60,000 a year, and in one day, that amount goes down to $36,000 a year, well, do the property taxes get reduced by 40%? How about the cable bill? How about the cost of a gallon of heating oil? Any special widow discount for that? This right here, ladies, this is how we are winding up with so many women in this country living out their mid to late retirement years in poverty. They outlived their husband's income streams. It's that simple. And you want to know what the real crime shame is about this? In many of these scenarios, it doesn't have to play out like this. Remember the slide we looked at earlier? They had assets, they had savings, they had investments. When they were heading into retirement 12, 15, 18 years ago, what do you think happens to those assets if they're not earmarked for something over the course of a couple of decades? They get spent. They get spent. So at that point, we've got poor Jane here in her 80s. Her income's just been slashed by 38%. And most likely, their asset base of savings has been compromised to the point where there's precious little that can be done to help her recover and mitigate this problem. And that's when painful choices have to be made. We don't want you in that position. There are ways to address this if you address it early enough. If you reposition some of your assets now, and believe me, the sooner you do it, the less money it takes to accomplish the goal, okay? Reposition some, not all, of your assets into something designed to throw off a guaranteed income. Something that is principal protected, that you don't have to worry about it in the markets. In this particular case, we're looking at a fixed indexed annuity. If they had done this at age 70 with $200,000, it would throw out an income stream equivalent to $420,000 being in it, would have fully replaced the amount that she lost and given her a little raise on top of that. So it's important that you're involved in this process now, and if your husband's making decisions, we need to be looking at, we all die. One of you is going to die first. So take the time now to earmark some of the assets to take care of whoever the survivor is going to be, to make sure they're not going to take a huge hit in their standard of living. All right, enough talking about death. Let's talk about taxes instead. Taxes on Social Security can be a little tricky, but the important thing for you to remember is that there's two thresholds for the taxability of your Social Security check. The first threshold comes into play, and it depends on how you file, whether you file single or household or jointly or whatever. The numbers are different, but the concept's the same. Once your income goes from 0 up to the first threshold, go $1 over that line, your Social Security check just became up to 50% taxable at whatever your federal rate is. The zone between the first and second thresholds, that's the 50% taxability zone. Go $1 over that second threshold, your Social Security check just became 85% taxable at whatever your federal tax rate is. So if you can limbo under one of those thresholds, it can make a real difference in the amount of money in your pocket. Better yours than Uncle Sam's, I would say. Now, how do they determine what counts for getting you to that threshold? They look at just about everything. Wages, pensions, divvies and cap gains on your investments. If you have an S-corp with an income stream coming into you, they're going to look at the business income. Even if you have tax-free municipals, everybody loves those. Oh, no taxes. Well, that interest is tax-free, but it counts towards the taxability of your Social Security check. They'll get you, okay? So sit down with us and look over what your projections are going to look like, and we'll help you determine if you can slip under one of those thresholds. All right. Let's kind of pull this all together now. We're gonna start wrapping up here. Let's talk about that income gap. We've talked about Social Security. We've talked about the pensions. Now we've got this gap that we need to deal with. Man, I missed my remote. Let's go back to George and Jane here. They're approaching retirement. They're in their 50s, early 60s. They want to start looking forward and making a plan for retirement. They have an income goal of about $5,600 a month. They know what Social Security is going to pay them, because we ran a report for them and told them. They know what their pensions are going to pay. But even after that, there's a $750 gap that they have to deal with on a monthly basis. At this point, early on, before the day before they're going to retire, they can address this and use less money than would be required if they waited till the last minute. If you need to create a lifetime income, You can do it, there's certain financial tools out there that can do it for you relatively painlessly and with a guarantee so that you can plan. Products that can tell you, okay, in X year you will get Y amount, guaranteed contractually. And if they make this plan 6 years ahead of time and move the money, maybe carve it out of a 401k or take it out of a savings account and put it into a tool that's designed to increase by a certain amount every year, they can pinpoint what they need and they can close that gap. And more importantly, even though this rolls up just like Social Security, it feels like Social Security, but in a way it's even better because it's fully inheritable, unlike Social Security that dies with you. Now, when we talk about making long-term plans like this, and when we talk about looking at the investing horizon, oh man, it was so much easier 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you could go to the bank and actually get a real interest rate on your money. You could get 4, 5, 6% on your savings. You weren't going to set the world on fire. It wasn't going to make you a millionaire. But you were principal protected and you had liquidity and you were getting paid a fair amount by the bank for the use of your money. The 1990s was also a very nice time to be in the stock market. Generally, there was not a lot of scary drops. There was a kind of gentle climbing to the stock market if you looked at a decade-long chart, and you could feel relatively confident that for the risk you were taking on in the market, you would be fairly compensated with a better than average return on your investment. What's it like today? What are you guys getting on your savings account in the bank?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Nothing. Maybe 1/10%. 1/10%. Yeah. So the bank is, yes, you're liquid. Yes, you're principal protected. But you've also found the safest way in the world to go broke because you are coming nowhere close to keeping up with inflation that way. When it comes to the stock market, well, geez, is anybody here enjoying this roller coaster ride of the last year, watching your 401k go up and down and up and down? 300 points up, 250 points down. It causes a lot of what, there's a technical term in the industry we use for this. It's called a Maalox moment, okay? When you're watching those balances zoom around. So when we're talking about looking at our overall retirement basket, the funds that we have to work with, as women, we're working with a pot of funds that are probably smaller than a typical man who does the same job as us. We tend to get paid a little less. We take time off from work to raise the kids when they're little, so you're not contributing then. So we wind up with smaller 401ks, smaller pensions, because those are based on how much you made, smaller Social Security checks, because those are based on how much you made, and yet we have longer time horizons that we need to fund because we live longer. So we have to take special care when we're selecting our investment assets at this stage in our lives, when we're approaching actually needing this money to live off of for the rest of our lives. We can't afford mistakes. So just to give you my perspective of where I'm coming from on this, I'm 48 years old, and feel free to forget that number. I just want you to understand that I've got another almost 20 years until I reach my full retirement age for Social Security. I'm going to be pulling the wagon for a paycheck for a while. So for my 401k and my IRA, I can take on a little bit more risk. I can tolerate these ups and downs because I know I'm not really going to need that money for 20 years. But you guys, if you got an invitation to come to this seminar, most likely you are in the red zone right in front of retirement. You're probably going to be needing these funds in 10 years or less. So when you think about historically what happens in the stock market, if you are heavily in the stock market, we've seen some real doozies in the last 20 years. 2008 went straight down, almost 55%. And it took almost 4.5 years to come back to break even. 2001, 2002, 2003, the tech wreck, 10 years before that, that was 20% down for 3 years in a row. In this room, we don't generally have enough time to wait out something like that. So now is the time to start thinking about taking some of that money and going to safety. And I'm not just talking about taking the chips off the table, I'm talking about get them completely out of the casino. Get them into a tool that is designed to throw off income for you, And so that when you start to build what we call your financial retirement house, you've already laid the groundwork. So when we talk about building a financial house for retirement, we're talking about starting with the foundation. Social Security, pension, and if you have an income gap, fixed or fixed indexed annuities, no variables. Set the foundation, and then with additional funds, you do the walls of your house. Maybe use a dividend-paying stock portfolio or laddered bonds, something where you'll leave the principal alone and just scoop off the interest or the dividends to use for your fun money. The I want to go see the grandkids at Thanksgiving money. The I want to take a cruise money. Okay? Foundation guaranteed, walls for fun, roof, and it's going to be a small roof because, bear in mind, remember the rule of 100. The roof is where you're going to stretch for a little bit of gain to keep you ahead of inflation. That's where you're going to take a little bit more risk. Now, that sounds like a simple concept, doesn't it? You wouldn't believe how many people can screw that up. Big, huge, risky roofs on top of paper-thin walls and crumbling foundations. And then they're shocked, I tell you, when the first market swing comes along, all of a sudden their house is falling down for their finances in retirement. We don't want you in panic mode like that. We want you to feel secure and understand that when you transition into retirement, it can be as easy as flipping a switch on the wall. So that's what we would like to help you with. Whether you are rich or poor, or somewhere in between, we all want the same thing. We want a happy, comfortable, secure retirement. Knowing where your income comes from, that is the foundation of creating a secure retirement. Not using I hope so money, using I know so money. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up literally in 1 minute. But first, I'm going to do one more game. Raise your hand if you agree with me that a stop sign is red. Good. Keep your hand up if you agree with me that a yield sign is yellow. It is not yellow, it is red. It hasn't been yellow for 20 years. And the reason why I play this little trick on you is this. I am sure that all of you have different financial products and investments that you've collected over the decades. You've got that life insurance policy sitting over there that you got back in 1988. Oh, you've got that rollover, that 401k sitting over here. And sometimes you look at stuff so often, or you have a picture in your head of how things should look, that you don't realize when it changes dramatically. You don't notice. So one of the things that we are offering to you, if you come out, there's a sheet in the back of all of your handouts where you can fill in to ask for an appointment. We are all doing free consultations, and we are going to sit down with you, and at the very least, we promise you, when you leave our office, you will understand your Social Security filing situation. If you're willing to share a little bit more information with us, we'll put Social Security in context with your overall savings, and we can give you a good idea of what you can look forward to for retirement income. So, at that, see, I don't have a button. I gotta go back over here. That's what I'm talking about. So after we meet, at that point, the decision is yours if you wanted to move forward. We will give you our fiduciary opinion, and we're either going to give you a big thumbs up and say, hey, you're in great shape, you're ready to head into retirement, or we'll suggest things that we think could be improved. But then you decide whether we go forward or not. Nobody's going to hound you, nobody's going to pester you, okay? So we really hope that you will all come out to see us. And one more thing, because I just saw her pop up over there. Jessie D is at the back of the room. She is John and Mary's daughter. She's back from college, and she's here helping us out tonight. Thank you, Jessie, for coming out to join us.
No problem.
And we will be out front, and if you want to make an appointment with us, we've got a calendar. We can also give you a call if you want to go home and look at your calendar first. But we do hope to get a chance to meet all of you. Thank you very much for coming out. We appreciate your time.